My name? Genevieve Whetten Johnson.
And I am Vera Whetten Pratt. And she is 100, and I will be 93 in December. So I'm the baby sister. She was born in Colonia Juárez, which is in the northern part of Mexico, but she was born at our grandmother's home because there was no midwife up in the mountains at that time. But she lived in a little small house up in the mountains and near a lot of dear relatives. And Uncle and Aunt lived right across the street from them, or next door maybe. And they had 5 boys, and she has 4 brothers. And she was the only girl with all these tomboys. And there was no running water, no electricity, wood stove, no refrigerator. And so all the water had to be carried from the river. And the washing, instead of carrying the water from the river to do the washing, that she and her friend would have their husbands load the dirty clothes and the family into the wagon and take them to the river, build a bonfire, and they boiled the water that was the only way they had to keep the white clothes white, and put soap in the water and boil it, and then they would rinse it with rinse tubs, but of course they didn't have to carry it. They could just dip it from the river into the tubs. And she and her friend would play with, we little ones, play hopscotch with us on their hips and play Andy-I over the fence, and while their mothers washed on the scrub board and hung them out on the bushes and the nearby fence to dry. Fold them, and then when the husbands finished the day's work, they would come and pick us all up. They of course took a picnic lunch and then take them home. That was wash day. And they had to cook what they were going to use that day because no refrigeration. Lots of work to do in the garden. They raised almost everything they ate. And my uncle had a store, and so he would go into town and bring back sugar and flour and the things that they didn't grow, but they grew most of what they ate. Cooked over the wood stove. She learned to cook when she was very young. One time she tells about her parents had gone fishing and were gone overnight, and my dad was bishop, and she was home babysitting the rest of us, and she was about 12 years old, and the stake president's wife came with him, who was a very excellent cook, and she decided she needed something special, and so she sent the boys out and picked currants, enough to make pie. And she made pie for the stake presidency and the stake president and his wife. And she just praised her to think that she could make a pie when she was 12 years old. Tell about playing with all those boys.
Well, there were 2 houses across the flat from town. I had 2 older brothers and a younger brother. My aunt had 4 boys, so there's me and all those boys. So when I went to school, the boys wanted to play with them because I was a girl. Girls wanted to play with them because I played rough like a boy. I was in real trouble.
And Mother always taught her that chickens go home to roost at night when the sun goes down, and little girls come home when the sun goes down. So they were living at the ranch, and so she was staying in town with an aunt and uncle, and that was just fine till the sun went down, and she struck out 6 years old to go home to the ranch by herself. Tell the rest of the story.
Well, when I got home, they wanted to spank me for coming home.
It was getting dark, and there was a man coming on a mule, and she didn't know who that was, but she just kept plugging her way toward home. And it turned out to be my dad's brother, Uncle Warren. But she was a little bit afraid of that, and being dusk, and that mule didn't want to let Uncle Warren put her on behind him. They finally got her on behind him, and then he took her till she was about by the fence, and she ran in home. And they're, "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be staying in there." "Well, I wanted my mom." Tell about changing dresses with Vilda. Vilda had chicken pox. Aunt Martha's kids had chicken pox.
She let me go down to Aunt Martha's to play with those two girls, Vilda and Martha. Don't change dresses. That's something I hadn't even heard of. That was something so exciting. Of course, I had to change dresses. They had the 7-year itch and they gave it to me.
I thought it was chicken pox.
What's the 7-year itch?
I took it home to the rest of the family.
You break out and it itches and itches, and you scratch and scratch it, and it's hard to get rid of. Tell about not wanting me to tag along, and so you spanked me and sent me home to Mama.
That's it.
Well, I was a teenager, and I thought I was pretty grown up. And she was little, and I didn't want her tagging me around. So when I say off, she'd sneak off and follow me, and then I'd spank her and send her home.
In order to get the work done, and so that the little girls would learn to work, Mom had assigned, the oldest daughter had the youngest child with her, and Jenny had Helen with her, and then she was the middle child, and let's see, and Ernestine was the oldest, was the middle child of Uncle Charles, and I got her, and I loved that because she liked to do everything I liked to do. She liked to exercise, and she liked to dance, and she liked to sing, and so we would sing all the way through our chores. Our older siblings were in school, so they knew lots of songs, and we learned them all, and we sang all the time we were doing our chores. There was no inside bathroom, so it was clean the toilet with somebody's, scrub it. We had ashes in the corner, or lime, and when it was used, you put lime down to keep the flies down. And every day it had to be scrubbed out and swept out and scrubbed out, and somebody else had dishes, and somebody else had floors, and somebody else had dusting and carrying the water in, and all of these. Anyway, so the big girls were to teach the little girls to work. And one time the parents had gone somewhere, and they were babysitting us, and two strange cars came and parked in front of the gate, and they didn't know who these guys were, and they were Mexicans in the car, and so they made us all the little guys get under the bed, and we didn't know what was going on. They said, just hide under the bed. So we hid under the bed and waited, and the big girls talked to them, and the guys went off, and then we could come out from under the bed. One day the big girls decided that they would take us on a picnic up the wash, and wild black walnuts grew up there, and so we took baskets and we're going to pick up. They would fall to the ground, and you pick them up, and they had green hulls, but you spread them out, and the hulls would dry and then be black hulls, and then you crack them, etc. Anyway, we went out to pick up these nuts one day. We took a picnic lunch, and we got out there and we're picking up our nuts, and a bull came along, and he was mad. Along here, there were not very many big trees. There were just little scrub oaks. They didn't know, the big girls didn't know what to do. So they'd put two of us up in a little scrub oak and put two in another and then two in another one. And then they ran for cover up. And that bull came around and he'd bunted one tree and bunted another tree. And we were screaming. He stayed there and he stayed there, and we thought we were going to have sleep there. He didn't go away. I don't know how long it was, but to us it was a long, long time. Finally, some cows came along and he went out to be with the cows. As soon as he did, they got us down out of those trees, and we ran till we got out of the sight of the bull. And then we retired and we walked very slowly on home, which was quite a ways. But the big girls always had to rescue us. If we did our chores in the morning, then they could take us swimming in the afternoon. And that was always fun. We didn't know how to swim, but we learned how to swim in the river just below the house. And our brothers lashed together logs and made a raft. And there was a big pond in front of the house at the ranch and one behind the house. And we liked to go in the one in front of the house because it was a lot longer. And they made oars and they would row us around, and we loved it. They worked during the day, but in the evening when they came in, they would take us rafting on these rafts. That was fun. And the bulls would come along as they would round up the cows and put them into milk. There were always bulls that challenged each other, and they would get on that dam and fight and fight and fight. And we would sit on the porch and clap and decide which bull was going to win, and one would finally push the other one into the pond, and then he was the victor. We churned lots of butter. My dad made the cheese in a big vat that was probably, how long, Gerald? 25 feet long, the vat?
Yeah, about
No.
Anyway,
About 3
it held
feet
about
wide.
100. It held 100 gallons of milk.
1.5 deep.
And to make cheese, it's in a sort of like a double boiler. There's one container and then water in the bottom one like a double boiler, and then fire under that. Not much fire, just have to keep it with a thermometer at a certain temperature. But the boys would milk at night and strain it into there. In the morning there would be a big heavy cream on it. So they would skim this off with a skimmer, and we had churns that would hold 5 gallons. One was like a drum, a small keg, and it had a wooden lid clamped on, and it had a handle, and the whole churn would turn over and turn over and turn over until the cream turned into butter. One was like a 5-gallon can, and it had a handle on, and it turned a paddle this way and would make butter. And one would be, it had a dasher in it, and it was a big crock, like a crock to put pickles in, and it also was 5 gallons, and it had a dasher that went up and down. And so we churned lots of butter, and Dad would make the cheese. We loved to go to the cheese house about 11 o'clock in the morning, because that's when the curd was ready to go into the press. And yesterday's cheese had to be taken out of the press, and as it was put down in the cheesecloth, and the weight put down on it, the board put down on it, there would be a little bit of this curd that came up, and we called it the trimmings. He would trim this cheese, and we got to eat the trimmings. And we would each have our little cup, and he'd give us each a little cup of curd. We dried lots and lots of apples in the summer. We had apple peelers, and we would go back to Colonia Juárez on the weekend, Saturday, and be there for Sunday, and then we would pick up the apples that had fallen off the trees, take them back to the ranch, and we'd peeled bushels of apples, and we had drying crates. But we had a tin roof at the ranch that was slanted. So they put a big ladder up there, and we would get up there and just put these apples, arrange them on this tin roof. And that was great, except it was in the summer, it was rainy season. So every now and again it would cloud up and rain. So we'd run up the ladder, pick up all the apples, take them inside, and then when the rain would quit, we'd get back up on there and put them back up. One day, and we loved to play in bases that once had a windmill, and there were 4 of them, and so they had a big hole big enough for a telephone pole to sit down in, but they were empty, so we could get down in there, and that was just fun. But in the middle of that there was a deep well, so we were not to get near that well. One day our guinea hen fell down the well, and so my dad tied a rope on the brother just between us and put him down the well. And he found not only the guinea hen, but he found a bucket and a big blue porcelain pitcher that we had that had been dropped down the well. And so he came out with buckets on his head and the guinea hen under his arm and the pitcher in the other hand, and they pulled him out of the well and rescued all of these things. Dad's first mission in 08? No, it wasn't 08. Yeah, maybe.
1908?
Was Dad's first mission 08? Anyway, when he was a young man, and it was all one mission. There was only one mission in Mexico at that time.
Oh.
And he spent a lot of his time in Ozumba and Puebla and Cuernavaca. And then Floyd was called there, her husband, on his mission, and then she was called to the same mission. And she served 8 months in Puebla, some in Monterrey, as far away as Monterrey. And she found people that had known her dad that many years before. Mm-hmm. And when Percy served his mission, it was divided into several missions, but he was in Veracruz. And he found somebody in Veracruz who was baptized by his dad, by Floyd. And so they were thrilled to find somebody that had known the parents.
Yeah.
And we had people that knew the missionaries quite a while before we went.
Mm-hmm.
They was always delighted to be somebody relative to somebody they knew before. Most of them, a lot of them couldn't read. So we had a lot of teaching to do, and we had to keep things plain but simple. That was mostly in the state of Puebla. What is it, southwest
of Mexico City.
Mexico City. And the missionaries had everything to do. The states mostly were all new over in that east area. So we had to teach them everything the church had. And so most of them didn't read. So we had to do some tall, simple explaining. Mm. Most of those didn't have very much education.
One lady got sick. She was very ill, and so the missionaries stayed with her. And Jen sat with her head in her lap. She was in a lot of pain. I don't know what she died of, but she died. And they had to dress her for burial. And the next day, when they were dressing her, when she had the girl's head in her lap, she thought that she had freckles in her head, and it turned out to be head lice. And so the next day, when they had her all dressed, then these lice were crawling around, but they didn't get them. And when she came back from her mission, she taught school in a little town up in the mountains. And it was very small. She taught 1st through 4th grades, 1 or 2 in each grade, but she had to move right along to get everything in. And there was only 2 teachers in the school. The other was a male, and every now and again they wanted to go to a dance in Colonia Juárez, and that was 50 miles away.
No.
No.
Not that far?
No.
Well, it was a long way, and the only way they could get there is horseback. So if they wanted to go on the occasions that they wanted to go to a dance, they would not give a recess and teach through lunch hour, and then they would take off. Let the kids go home a little bit early, but they had not had recess, and they had had no lunch period until after lunch. And they would ride for this whatever time, 6 hours, and then go to the dance.
We'd teach school till noon and cram all the important lessons in. And then we'd ride, 40 miles to go to a dance that night.
20 miles.
Oh, Pacheco's Garcia? Garcia?
Mm-hmm.
Garcia's not much farther than Pacheco. It's just a different direction.
Well, it was a long, long horseback ride. And then she taught school in Dublin, and there she only had to teach 2 grades, 4th and 5th. And she had 42 students. Half of them were English speaking and half of them were Spanish speaking. But they all could understand English.